Hi, Gems. Welcome in to the VTuber Voices podcast. This is your host, Syafire, and on this podcast, we talk about what it's like to be a entrepreneur, a creative, a virtual VTuber, all that sort of area of things. So if you're looking for anything like that, you found the right place. We are continuing our interview with Spats. Spats is an experienced animator in the industry. In this episode, we'll be focusing on her experience in animation, some of the studios she worked at, as well as what it's like to work in a studio and the studio life, as well as how contracts sort of go. So it's cool to hear from an animator like Spats about her experience in a studio to dissect a little bit more about what that is like. All right, let's go. So tell us a little bit about your background in animation. And like I said, I know some NDA stuff, so share what you can with us.
Sure, I could give you the very start.
Sure.
And go from there. So I went to school in 2014. I went to it was a year course.
Oh, cool.
It was called Van Arts. It was a 2D character animation course.
Yeah.
Prior to that, I was, right out of high school, you don't kind of know what you're doing, or your teachers my teacher was like, you should go to fine art. You should go to fine art.
Yeah.
Or fine art bachelor. So I had done a year prior of university, but I got sick and I missed 2 weeks. So it basically put me all behind, and I had to wait till the next semester to continue.
Yeah.
And it kind of I got sick in the sense that I was hospitalized. So
yeah.
I had to it kind of my goals kind of were okay, wait a minute, maybe this isn't what I want to do. What is a fine art degree gonna do for me?
Yeah.
And I wasn't bad at art. I was in high school, I was the artist, the one that could draw. So I took a little bit of a break. I worked full time for a year and a half or something. And then I found out about all these other, I was can I do animation maybe? Because I figured, and then I went to a job fair, and there was schools there too. And I was okay, here's a year course. It's not 4 years, it's 1 year. After this 1 year, you're not having a degree or anything, but you get a certificate. You make a portfolio, and this school was, not renowned, but it was known to, their graduates would have a pretty high rate of getting hired right after.
Yeah.
So, and it was in the country, I'm in Canada. So I was okay, so my dad had an RESP for me, but I took out student loans from the government to cover the actual tuition, because it was $25,000 for the year.
Yeah.
And then my dad, I was able to have a sum of money for living expenses for the year.
Yeah.
So I went to school. I did that year course. I will say I learned things, but everything I learned in school, you could learn online.
Yeah.
Or through whatever means. I would say school isn't for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And if I had to redo it, I would probably try on my own. But hindsight is 2020, so I still respect the people that I went to school with and the teachers I had. But if I had to redo it, I would probably maybe focus a year on learning myself and building my own portfolio, because a lot of the school was deadline. Teachers have their own opinions on certain things.
Right.
I will say that my demo reel from school is garbage. I learned way more on the job than I ever did in school.
Yeah.
But basically a month or two after graduating, I got my job. I think I was the first person to get hired out of my class.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Good for you.
And then basically I worked from May 2014 all the way up until 2019 of 2019 of October is when I worked all the way up until then. When was it? 2020? What year is it?
It's 2021.
Yeah, it's 2021.
I think.
Last year. I worked all the way up until 2020 last year.
Yeah.
September. So I started out as a layout artist on Littlest Pet Shop season 4. Layout artist is different per student. Layout artists at the studio I was at was basically key posing the
Yeah.
characters. So you would do all the posing from the boards, so that the in-betweening was done elsewhere. But we did the key posing. Regular layout was like the posing, but it wasn't the difficult ones. And then I went up to from Littlest Pet Shop season 4. I ended my contract early with them because the producer on the Mr. Peabody and Sherman show, they were looking to get people on their team, and at the time we were like, you know, when you're part of a studio, there's other shows that are going on, and I was like,
Yeah.
hey, it'd be cool to work on something like that because I like the style of the show. It looked interesting and the colors and everything looked cool.
Yeah.
And the design looked cool. And then they were looking, and I would be told to tone down my expressions. Like, they're like,
Wow.
it looks great, but they wanted it toned down because it was too, like, they're like, it looks great, but it's a little too extreme.
Yeah.
So, but that was good because the other show was like, we want people that can exaggerate the expressions. So then I got to move on to that show as a layout artist. And that's on Netflix.
Heck yeah. Did you reach out to them or did they contact you?
They reached out to me because it was like, basically when you're in a studio and you're on good terms, you know, the coordinator or whatever will, like, you know, when your contract's coming up, because you're not guaranteed full-time work forever. It's like a set amount of time.
Right.
So they come back and say, hey, are you interested in this? You say, yeah. So they were like, we're gonna end your contract like a couple weeks early to go on to this show. And I was like, okay. So it wasn't like I was breaking a contract. It was the studio that was like, yeah, we're gonna move you to this show because you're needed there. So I worked on that. Then I worked on season 7 of My Little Pony as a layout artist. So same thing, posing. Then I worked on as a key layout artist, The Adventures of Rocky and Bullwinkle, which is an Amazon Prime show. And then from there, and that was all these contracts were about 8 months or a year.
Yeah.
And then I went back on My Little Pony season 9, the final season of My Little Pony, as a key layout artist because they had seen me, you know, and key gets paid a little bit more than regular layout artists because you're doing a little bit more difficult scenes.
Yeah.
And then from there, this was in 2018, I think, like late 2018. I moved studios. So all my coworkers and my boss and people that I worked under formed their own studio.
Yeah. I hear that happening a lot.
Switched. Yeah. So then I switched to their studio because they had a good working relationship. They have a good working relationship with DreamWorks.
Yeah.
So I was working on DreamWorks shows there because like the Peabody show is also a DreamWorks thing. So like my studio, lots of people don't know, but like a lot of the studios, like when it's a DreamWorks show, it's all sent like contracted to other smaller studios. I wouldn't say we're a small studio by any means, but like other studios aside from DreamWorks, a lot of the work is done in other places of the world.
Yeah.
That's how they save money. So I went to Doberman and I did Rhymetime Town. I did special posing and key animation. So I did run cycles and stuff, so it was like my first like animating, like actually animating, like hand draw animating in animate, but like drawing it. And special posing, which was basically key posing, but I didn't have to do scenes. It was just there were specific poses that might be too hard for the overseas animators to come up with from the board. So I would draw those poses to and everything.
Yeah.
And then from there I did character design also and worked on a bunch of secret things. But that involved full key animating. So like doing the roughs, doing the coloring and blah 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 and all that. So I did a bunch of that. And then character design and then now I'm a VTuber. Smile.
Yes. Oh my gosh, what a wild journey. That's so cool.
Yeah.
Is there
I know every show I worked on. Like I know I haven't been working in 10 years. It's been 5. So
yeah.
I can recall most of it.
Oh, that's so cool. That's awesome. And so Star says, okay, now I have to ask this question too. Which My Little Pony character was your favorite?
I like Starlight Glimmer because it was I didn't watch My Little Pony. I watched a couple episodes here and there to animate, like to see to pull things and stuff, but I liked Starlight Glimmer because she was started out as a villain and became like just like Vegeta, villain
Yes.
to ally.
I
So
love that. Those are
that's
my
why I like.
favorite characters
Yeah, I love
too.
those. Like me too. I love those characters.
Yes.
So yeah, I would say the funnest one to animate was Pinkie Pie because we were allowed to go a little bit off model with her.
Yeah. Yeah, because she's just
Of her
off the walls.
character.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I love that. My favorite little pony is Rarity. I don't even know why. I'm like not about that life, but her sass was just next level.
Yeah, Rarity's pretty. Yeah, I think all the ponies have like I'm not a brony. Like people make the joke because I worked on it, like you're a brony, but I'm not like I wasn't into this. I think I watched the show when I was like a teenager, like a couple episodes, and I drew myself as like a little pony Sona at one point. And when I was that age, and it's like if you can like deep dive into my old DeviantArt, you'll see. But like I drew that one time myself as a pony because literally everyone was drawing themselves as a pony. I think that's when it blew up. But I didn't expect to be working on the show, and I didn't even know the show was worked on in Canada, right? Or like a portion of it. So
Yeah.
like, a lot of animation is done in Canada. So boards or otherwise.
Yeah. I didn't know that actually. That's cool to know.
Yeah.
Heck yeah. And Pocket asks, just out of curiosity, is key animation different from key posing? I've been wanting to try to go for this type of work, but I don't think I understand animation terms. Thanks in advance.
No problem. So key posing, yes, because if you're doing key animation, you're doing all of it. You're doing the in-betweening, the mouse sync, all that kind of stuff, the lead and follow, all that stuff. You're doing every frame, when you're doing the animation.
Mm-hmm.
If you're doing key posing, you're just doing the keys. So when you get a I think it's easy to see like there's on Twitter, there's these amazing animators and storyboard artists.
Yeah.
Some storyboard like this board, I will say the boards you see on Twitter that are so amazing, those are practically animated, okay? Boards are not do not come like that. They're usually like a couple frames per scene, maybe like 8 frames per scene. So key posing, you would be doing, say you get a character walking across the screen, you would just pose the specific keys of that walk cycle. So maybe you'll do 4 keys for that walk cycle, and then the animator will take those poses that you did and do the in-betweening. And with the shows I worked on, they were all Flash shows. They were all Adobe Animate now.
Yeah.
They renamed it to Animate, but you would pose the character or redraw certain legs because it's like it's not a rig because it's more of like cutout animation, but not really. It's like you would get a build with all these different layers with all these different expressions that you would either switch out or manipulate or redraw to get the thing you want. And I wish I could show because I have the files. I have some files of the stuff I worked on. It'd be easier to show, but I would need to get permission to do that. Maybe at one point I will see if I can get permission to put it in a reel or something.
Yeah.
So that I can show people what
Yeah.
I'm talking about. It's easier to talk about like that. But yeah, I would say just look up the studio was a part of is now called Wild Brain. You could look up Wild Brain key posing or layout and see if something pops up on the internet. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really cool to hear about the difference too, because I know I've only taken one animation class. I absolutely loved it. So I know some of the terminology, and it's really cool to hear about the differences. And that's a really good explanation. So thank you.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and usually layout with other studios means like you're setting up all the background and the layout of the actual scene. But like with that studio, it meant like character posing layout, not necessarily background elements. However, I did do like background elements here and there, like setting it up or putting all the assets in a scene, but it was mostly focused on the character acting.
Yeah.
So
yeah. And did you say you preferred character design or animation?
I like both.
Yeah.
But animation is stressful.
Yeah. Yeah.
I wasn't like there was some stuff I worked on and it was a lot more rewarding, I would say, to work on key animation. Like all the stuff that I worked on was really, really good. But I will say I was able to slack off more and still have like really good quality work with character design than
Yeah.
I was with the animation. I was basically working the full time, sometimes overtime,
Yeah.
but not necessarily. But like with animation, it's more like more tweaking, more revisions, more
Right.
trying stuff, whereas the character design is like just pretty straightforward.
Yeah, and you could suggest stuff with it too. You don't have to like fully render. You could suggest it if it's just the sheet.
Yeah, and like with my animation, all the like, because I did a lot of animation. I didn't think I could animate. Like I always second guessed myself.
Really?
With a lot of like when I was like, oh God, this doesn't look good, and or like I don't know if they're gonna like it. And my bosses always loved my work. They always praised me and stuff.
Yeah.
So it was a good boost in confidence that I'm like, yeah, I can do this. Because if my freaking bosses are like keep coming back to me, you know, even where I'm not working with them at a full-time capacity now, they still message me and they still are like, hey, can you help us with something, you know? And you know, it's a good like confidence boost, I would say.
Thank you so much for listening to the VTuber Voices podcast. Thank you to Spats, our guest. I really appreciate her coming on to the show. Her experience has been invaluable, and we'll be continuing the next episode, learning more about studio work and what it's like to do freelance versus working at a studio, and sort of digging more into that. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next time. Have a great day.